This afternoon, just before the Melbourne Cup, the Reserve Bank decided to lift cash rates by 0.25%, its 13th rise since May 2022. The cash rate now stands at 4.35%. Treasurer Jim Chalmers blames rising fuel prices for driving inflation, but didn't commit to introducing any price caps or subsidies.
We're not currently working up any proposals on the fuel excise. We are focused on rolling out $23 billion of cost of living help, which is designed to take some of the sting out of these inflationary pressures.
Economist and co-founder of Macro Business, Leith Van Onselen, joins me now. Welcome to the program, Leith. Look, obviously there are global factors that are contributing to this rate rise today. How much of this is out of the government's control, and which areas is in Albanese and Jim Chalmers' control that they could be doing more on to tackle inflation?
Yeah, obviously there are some factors obviously out of its control, and the most obvious of that is obviously petrol prices, which have increased quite significantly over the past few months, and that's helping to drive inflation. But there are, as you said, several factors that are in its own control, and I'd argue that a lot of Australia's inflation is actually being driven by the Albanese government's record immigration program. Now, the Reserve Bank, in its last month's statement of monetary policy, said that it was concerned about two things. It was concerned about rapidly rising rents, and it was also concerned about the house price rebound. And both of those obviously being driven by the record immigration that we're seeing. And it's worth noting that the Reserve Bank's rate hikes are slowing down individual households. We're seeing that we're in a per capita recession. Household spending per household is shrinking. But the problem is we're adding so many households to the Australian economy. So the Australian population grew by nearly 630,000 last financial year. That what this means is that aggregate demand keeps rising, and effectively, that is what's helping to push up this inflation through rents, through construction prices, etc. And it's worth pointing out that housing accounts for around 1/4 of the CPI basket. So when you have all this extra demand piling into housing, it pushes up rents, it pushes up construction costs, etc. That fuels inflation directly.
Well, given the former Governor Philip Lowe did make quite direct comments about our housing supply and how there isn't enough housing for an extra 2% of people, which is what our migration levels are increasing by, is it irresponsible that the Albanese government is continuing this big Australia policy when it is contributing to inflation?
Oh, absolutely. And it's not just irresponsible, it's also inequitable, because obviously those soaring rental costs effectively land on the most vulnerable in Australia. At the same time, it's pushing up inflation, which then means the RBA is going to have to fight against that through higher interest rates, which then smashes mortgage holders. So effectively 2/3 of Australia is getting smashed. You've got renters on the one hand getting smashed by these soaring rents. Then you've got mortgage holders getting smashed. And then there's another third who don't rent and own the home outright who are laughing. So it is incredibly irresponsible. It's also, it's obviously lifting inequality, and it's also reducing our living standards directly just by the sheer volume of people. Infrastructure, housing, nothing is keeping up.
What about productivity? The government has been warned on multiple occasions by the RBA to try and lift productivity. Obviously, this is a long-term proposition, so the coalition government before Labor didn't do enough to boost productivity either. But is this also an area where some of the Albanese government's policies, like industrial relations, like energy policy, are dragging and slowing productivity that, again, is contributing to the inflation problem?
Yeah, look, I can't speak to industrial relations. I'm certainly not an expert in that area. Soaring energy costs is a direct own goal of Australia's. So effectively, we have no East Coast gas reservation on Australia's East Coast. And what that's basically meant is that we export about 80% of our gas, and we've engineered a gas shortage in what is the Saudi Arabia of gas. Australia is the world's biggest exporter. And what that's done is it's effectively pushed up inflation across the board. At the same time, we've got this record immigration program running. And as you said, former Governor Phil Lowe said that if business investment, housing, infrastructure doesn't keep pace with population growth, well, that's going to wreck productivity. And that's what we're seeing. We're basically seeing so many people come in and nothing is keeping up. And that basically effectively lowers productivity. And you see that through increased traffic congestion, all those sorts of things. So, there are definitely factors there which are homegrown.
Just very quickly before we go, are you concerned about Australia going into a recession off the back of this rate rise? And also many economists are predicting there'll be another one on the 5th of December.
Yeah, look, I think it's very hard for Australia to have a technical recession when you've got the population growing by 2.5% through extreme migration. But what we are in, we're actually already in a per capita recession. What that means is that once you adjust for population growth, we've actually had 2 consecutive quarters of negative growth. And I think that's going to get worse over the next period. It's just going to be covered up by this extreme population growth we're having, which is going to keep growing the pie while everyone's share of the pie continues to shrink. And that means lower living standards for you and me.
All right, tough times ahead. Leith Van Onselen, thank you. I appreciate your time.
Thanks, Sherry.